They gave me the worst office at the family business. They didn't know I inherited the whole company. All right, Reddit, grab your popcorn and get ready to hear this train wreck. I need you to bear with me till the end. It's absolutely worth it. I'm Cheryl B., 28, female. I run a consulting firm in Austin. What my family doesn't know is that I'm also the majority owner of Hammond Asphalt and Paving, the family business they've been treating like their personal piggy bank for years. In their eyes, I'd been the disappointing daughter who wasted her computer science degree instead of joining the family business empire like my older brother. Alan is everything my parents ever wanted. 6'2", played college football, married to an Instagram model wannabe named Brittany, the golden child who took over as COO of Hammond Asphalt and Paving when he turned 30. My dad made a whole event out of it. Me, I got a handshake and a good luck with your little tech thing when I started my company at 25. What none of them knew was that my grandfather, my mom's dad, Richard Sterling, had been secretly investing in my company for years, teaching me everything about business that my own father never bothered to share. And when he died 8 months ago, he left me something that would change everything. Hammond Asphalt and Paving, 51% of it anyway. Grandpa had quietly been buying shares over the past decade through a shell company, then left them all to me in a trust. $50 million in annual revenue, 200 employees, contracts across 3 states. My dad's lawyers spent the first 6 months after Grandpa's death trying to contest it, found nothing, and finally gave up last month. They failed. So when my mom called about the mandatory family business retreat at the company's main office in Denver, I knew exactly what was coming. This wasn't a retreat. This was my dad and Alan trying to consolidate power, probably announcing some new restructuring that would cut out the remaining minority shareholders. They'd done it before. What they didn't know was that I was now the majority shareholder, and I'd kept my mouth shut for 8 months. I flew into Denver on a Friday afternoon. The office was in this huge industrial complex near the airport. Grandpa had built this place from nothing. My dad, Robert Hammond, was in the main lobby when I arrived. He looked at me like I'd tracked dog crap on his expensive floors. "Cheryl, surprised you showed up." "Wouldn't miss it," I said, keeping my tone neutral. Family business and all. Alan appeared from the executive hallway. "Little sister," he said with that smirk. "Mom said you'd probably flake. Good to see you actually committing to something for once." I smiled, didn't take the bait. "Where's your luggage?" Dad asked. "We've got room set up in the executive wing for the weekend." "I'll grab it from my rental." What I didn't tell them was that I'd already checked into a suite at the Four Seasons downtown. The executive wing was exactly what you'd expect. My dad and stepmom Teresa got the founder's suite. Originally, Grandpa's office converted into a full apartment. Alan and Brittany got the VP suite. My mom got a junior executive room. And me? They gave me a converted storage room next to the loading dock. I'm not exaggerating. It had been a supply closet 6 months ago. Someone had thrown a twin bed in there, a plastic desk from Office Depot, and called it a bedroom. Alan showed me to the room personally and couldn't keep the smirk off his face. "Sorry about the accommodations, sis. We're just tight on space with all the new hires Dad brought in. You understand?" "No problem," I said, tossing my backpack on the sad little bed. "I'm a simple girl," he laughed. "Yeah, we noticed. Anyway, dinner's at 7 in the executive dining room. Try to dress appropriately. Yeah, Dad's got some important people coming." After he left, I stood in that depressing concrete box and took a deep breath. My phone buzzed. Text from my CFO, Sarah, one of 2 people who knew the truth about my ownership. "Please tell me you're not actually staying there." "No way. Just documenting everything. Hotel downtown." "Good. Board meeting Monday morning. O'Brien confirmed he's bringing the full acquisition offer." O'Brien. David O'Brien, CEO of Redstone Development Group. He'd been trying to buy Hammond Asphalt and Paving for 3 years. My dad kept refusing. Said he'd never sell Grandpa's legacy. Total lie. He just wanted more money. What Dad didn't know was that I'd been in talks with O'Brien for 2 months. Not to sell, to expand. O'Brien wanted to merge our operations, and the preliminary numbers would triple Hammond's value within 2 years. But I needed this weekend first. I needed to see exactly how far my family would go. The executive dining room was pure Dad. Leather chairs, dark wood paneling, photos of projects covering the walls. Notice how none of them featured Grandpa after about 2010. Yeah, Dad had been erasing him from company history for years. I showed up at 6:58 in dark jeans and a button-down. The important people turned out to be 3 city council members from Colorado Springs and their spouses. Dad was pitching a major municipal contract, new highway repaving project, the kind of project that could define the company's year. I was seated at the far end of the table, naturally away from the important conversation, next to one of the council members' bored wives who kept checking her phone. Alan held court at Dad's right hand, talking up the company's track record, their commitment to local hiring, all the standard political nonsense. My mom, Beth, was being the perfect corporate spouse to Dad, even though they'd been divorced for 15 years. She'd remarried some accountant, but she still showed up to these things, still played her role. It was pathetic. The food was catered from some overpriced steakhouse, Wagyu beef, expensive bottles, the whole performance. I ordered the cheapest thing on the menu, a chicken dish, and drank water. Cheryl, you're not having any of the good stuff? Dad asked loudly enough that everyone turned to look. It's a $200 bottle. I'm good with water, thanks. Still watching pennies, huh? Alan chimed in. The startup life must be tough. One of the council members, a guy named Donnelly, looked over at me with polite interest. What kind of startup are you running, Cheryl? Software consulting, I said. We build custom solutions for mid-sized companies, infrastructure, data systems, that kind of thing. Must be a tough market, Donnelly said. We do all right. Alan jumped in before I could elaborate. Cheryl's being modest. Her little operation is adorable, very grassroots, not like real paving work, but someone's got to build the apps, right? The table laughed. I took a bite of chicken and didn't react. But what Alan didn't know, Donnelly's chief of staff had reached out to my company 4 months ago. We'd built them a project management system that saved the city $400,000 in the first quarter. Donnelly knew exactly who I was. He was just being polite. The meal continued with Dad and Alan's performance, talking about Hammond's reliability, their safety record, their commitment to quality. Then the conversation shifted. The challenge we're facing, Dad said, is succession planning. Alan here has been doing outstanding work as COO, but eventually we need to think about the next generation taking full control. Teresa, my stepmom, smiled like a proud peacock. She had 2 kids from her first marriage, but they were younger and not involved in the business. Alan was her golden stepson. I've been working with our board on a transition plan, Dad continued. Within the next 2 years, I'm planning to step back and let Alan take over as CEO. Fresh vision, new energy. Alan tried to look humble. That's quite the responsibility, one of the council members said. I'm ready for it, Alan replied. This company is in my blood. It's what I was born to do. I almost laughed. Alan was born to do whatever made him look important. What about you, Cheryl? Donnelly asked, because apparently he was in a troublemaking mood. Any interest in joining the family business? The table went quiet. Dad's expression could have cut glass. Cheryl's not really the paving type, he said before I could answer. She's more cerebral, better suited to her computers. Translation. She's not tough enough for real work. Actually, I said, setting down my water glass, I've always been interested in the business. Grandpa used to take me to job sites when I was a kid. This was true. While Alan was off playing football, I was spending summers with Grandpa. Really? Brittany said. I thought you were scared of getting your hands dirty. Nah, I said. Just better at other things. Alan leaned back in his chair. You know what? I always wondered, Cheryl, why Grandpa left you that money for your startup instead of investing more in the family business? Like, didn't that seem weird to you? And there it was, the real reason for the hostile seating arrangement. They wanted to talk about Grandpa's will in front of witnesses. Make me look like I'd stolen from the family. Grandpa invested in what he believed in, I said simply. Must have been nice, Alan said, his smile not reaching his eyes. Getting a cash injection while the rest of us had to actually work for our money. I worked for it, I replied, keeping my voice level. Built my company from scratch. How many employees? Donnelly asked, now openly interested. About 35 in Austin. You could have heard a pin drop. Alan's jaw actually tightened. Dad looked like I'd just announced I was pregnant. That's impressive, one of the other council members said. It's whatever, I said, deliberately downplaying it. Small potatoes compared to this. I gestured around the room at the Hammond asphalt and paving empire on display, but the damage was done. That night, after the dinner ended and everyone retreated to their respective rooms, I did what I should have done months ago. I went through the company files, not the official ones, those I already had access to as the majority shareholder. I mean the real files, the ones my dad kept in his private office, the ones he thought were secure. Turns out hiring the company's IT contractor to update the security system meant he reported to me now, had for 6 months. Travis was a good kid, 26, smart as heck, and loyal to whoever paid him, which was me. He'd given me full access to the digital infrastructure weeks ago. I sat in my storage room turned bedroom with my laptop, remote accessing Dad's computer through a VPN that Travis had set up. What I found made my blood run cold. First, Dad and Alan had been systematically overcharging clients for years. It was subtle, billing for slightly more materials than used, adding questionable labor hours here and there, enough to pad profits by maybe 10 to 15% per project without triggering obvious red flags. Second, they'd been planning to force out the minority shareholders through a restructuring scheme. Third, they'd tried to contest Grandpa's will through their lawyers. There were consultation notes about challenging his mental competency, discussions about finding angles to break the trust. Fourth, and this one hurt, there was a memo from Dad to Alan, dated 3 weeks after Grandpa's funeral. Subject line, "The Cheryl Problem." I opened it. "Alan, we need to discuss your sister. Beth thinks we should bring her into the company now that Richard's gone. Give her some nonsense title to keep her happy." I disagree. Cheryl's always been Richard's pet project, and we both know Richard had a soft spot for losers. The last thing we need is her sniffing around the business, asking questions, trying to implement her tech startup nonsense. So, let's keep her at arm's length. She'll get the message eventually and stop bothering us. If she doesn't, we can always buy her out of whatever Richard left her for pennies on the dollar. Kid's got no business sense anyway. Let me know your thoughts. Dad. Alan's response was even better. Agreed 100%. Cheryl's a parasite who only succeeded because Grandpa gave her a head start. I'll handle keeping her distanced. She already knows she's not welcome. I sat there staring at my laptop screen for a solid 5 minutes. You know what happens when you're underestimated your whole life? Eventually, you stop caring about proving people wrong. You just start planning. My phone buzzed. Text from Sarah. "Are you still alive?" "Yes. I found some interesting files. Dad's been running a skim operation. Alan is in on it. Evidence, screenshots for days, emails, spreadsheets, the whole operation documented. Cheryl, tell me you're not about to do something stupid. I'm about to do something smart." I spent the next 2 hours downloading everything I could. Every email, every financial document, every memo I had access to. I organized it into folders, uploaded it to secure cloud storage, sent copies to Sarah and my lawyer. Then I did something I'd been putting off. I called my mom. She answered on the third ring, voice groggy. "Cheryl, it's midnight." "I know. Can you talk?" "Is everything okay? When you and Dad got divorced, why did you stay involved with Hammond Asphalt and paving? You could have walked away clean, but you still show up to these things." Silence on the other end. "Because it was my father's company," she said finally. "Because even though Richard and I had our differences, he built something real. I didn't want to see it destroyed." "Did you know Dad's been stealing from it?" Another pause. "What are you talking about?" "Overbilling, skimming. He and Alan have a whole system. I've got proof." "Cheryl, you need to be very careful about making accusations like that." "It's not an accusation, Mom. It's documentation. They've been running this for at least 5 years. I heard her sit up. 5 years at minimum? Could be longer. Why are you telling me this? Because you're the only one in this family who ever gave a crap about what Grandpa built, I said. Because I need to know if I'm about to burn it all down, whether there's anything worth saving. Wait, what are you planning? I'm planning to take what's mine, I said. The question is whether you want to be part of the solution or if you're going to side with them when it all goes down. Cheryl. I'm the majority shareholder, Mom. Silence, then very quietly. You're what? Grandpa left me Hammond Asphalt and Paving. All of it. I've been the owner for 8 months. The silence that followed was profound. Richard left you the company through a trust. An airtight legal structure. Dad's lawyers already tried to break it. They failed. Does your father know? Not yet, but he's about to. More silence, then, what do you need from me? And that's when I knew I had at least one ally in this mess. Saturday morning, 6:30 a.m. I was awakened by diesel engines firing up in the truck bay outside my window. I'd gotten maybe 4 hours of sleep, but I was running on pure adrenaline at this point. I showered and headed to the executive wing. I showed up a bit early. Dad and Alan were already in the conference room with 2 guys I didn't recognize. The door was closed, but the glass walls let me see inside. They were going over documents, pointing at spreadsheets, looking very serious. I knocked and walked in. We're in a private meeting, Dad said, not looking up. I'm aware. I'm here for it. Alan sighed. Cheryl, this is executive level planning. It's not really appropriate for the owner of the company, I interrupted. Yeah, you're right. It's not appropriate. It's mandatory. That got their attention. All 4 heads snapped toward me. The look on their faces was priceless. What are you talking about? Dad asked. I pulled out my phone and brought up the trust documents, handed my phone to Dad. Richard Sterling established an irrevocable trust 8 months ago. The sole beneficiary is me. The sole asset is 51% of Hammond Asphalt and Paving shares, which he'd been quietly acquiring through Sterling Holdings LLC since 2015. You've been working for me since March. Congratulations. The color drained from his face as he read. Alan grabbed the phone, scanned the document, his expression going from confused to angry to panicked. This is nonsense. Grandpa wouldn't what? Leave his company to someone who actually gave a crap about it? I took my phone back. He watched you 2 run this place like your personal piggy bank for years. He knew everything. One of the unknown guys stood up. I think we should leave you to discuss this privately. Sit down, Mr. O'Brien, I said. We're just getting started. David O'Brien froze. Alan and Dad both looked at him like he'd betrayed them. You know him? Dad asked O'Brien. We've been in discussions, O'Brien admitted, about a potential merger. A merger? Alan's voice went up an octave. You're trying to sell Grandpa's company to this corporate raider? Are you serious? I'm trying to save it, I corrected, from the 2 idiots who've been destroying its reputation and financial stability. O'Brien's company wants to merge operations, expand our market share, and triple our revenue within 2 years. I've been reviewing the proposal for 8 weeks. The other unknown guy, O'Brien's CFO, was trying very hard not to smile. You can't do this, Dad said, standing up. His hands were shaking. This company is my life's work. No, it's Grandpa's life's work. You just inherited it and decided to use it as your personal ATM. I built Hammond into what it is today. You did, and then you started stealing from it. Alan stepped forward. Watch your mouth. We're not thieves. I pulled out my laptop, opened it on the table, and turned the screen toward them. On display, an email from Dad to Alan discussing adjustments to the Colorado Springs Highway project bid. This is from 4 days ago, I said. Want me to show them the other files I found? Dad's face went white. You hacked my computer? No, I accessed company property as the owner. O'Brien was now openly interested, leaning forward to read the screen. His CFO was taking notes. You smug little... Alan started, moving around the table toward me. Sit down, Alan. My voice came out cold, hard, the tone I used when firing incompetent employees. Unless you want me to call the cops right now and have you arrested for fraud. He stopped. What's going to happen next, I continued, is this. Mr. O'Brien and his team are going to conduct a full audit of Hammond Asphalt and Paving's financials. Every project for the past 7 years. Every billing statement. Every contract. When they find the irregularities, and they will, we're going to have a very serious conversation about criminal charges versus voluntary restitution. You're bluffing, Dad snapped. Am I? Want to test that theory? Because I've already sent copies of everything to Hammond's board of directors and to our corporate attorney. They're meeting Monday morning to discuss whether to involve law enforcement. That was only partially true. The board meeting was scheduled, but I hadn't decided yet whether to involve cops. That depended on how cooperative Dad and Alan wanted to be. What do you want? Dad asked finally. The fight had gone out of him. I want you both gone, I said simply. You resign from all positions. You divest your minority shares, to me at fair market value. You sign NDAs, non-competes, and agreements not to disparage the company, and you pray I don't decide to press charges anyway. That's insane, Alan said. We can fight this. We have lawyers. Your lawyers already tried to break the trust. How'd that work out? I looked at O'Brien. Should we continue this discussion without them? O'Brien glanced at his CFO, then nodded. Probably for the best. You're making a huge mistake, Dad said, grabbing his papers. No, I'm fixing yours. They left. Alan slammed the door. Hard enough to rattle the glass. Through the wall, I could see other employees starting to arrive, sensing the drama, trying to look busy, while obviously listening. O'Brien sat back down. That was intense. That was necessary, I said. Now, let's talk about this merger for real. By noon, the entire office knew something was happening. Dad and Alan had stormed out, gotten in Alan's truck, and peeled out of the parking lot like teenagers. People were talking and spreading rumors. I called an all-hands meeting for 2 p.m. Sarah flew in from Austin on the first flight she could catch. Showed up at 1:30 with her laptop. Please tell me you have a plan, she said, dropping her bag. I have a plan. A good plan or a Cheryl plan? What's the difference? A good plan doesn't end with anyone in jail or bankrupt. Then definitely a Cheryl plan. She groaned, but she pulled out her laptop and started prepping the presentation anyway. Sarah had been with me since I started the company. She knew how I operated. At 2 p.m., the main conference room was packed. Every employee who could be there was there. Project managers, foremen, office staff, even some of the equipment operators who'd come in from job sites. Travis, my IT guy, had set up a video feed for the remote workers and field teams. I stood at the front of the room and waited for the noise to die down. For those who don't know me, I'm Cheryl B. Richard Sterling was my grandfather, and as of 8 months ago, I'm the majority shareholder and owner of this company. Shocked silence. A few people pulled out their phones, probably fact-checking me. The reason you're learning this now is because I wanted to understand what Hammond Asphalt and Paving had become in the years since my grandfather's death. I pulled up the first slide. Employee satisfaction scores, safety records, project completion rates. You, the people in this room and in the field, have maintained the standards my grandfather established. You've built a company with one of the best reputations in the industry. You should be proud of that. A few nods. People were still wary, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Unfortunately, that's not the whole story. Next slide. Financial irregularities, client overcharges, systematic fraud. Over the past several years, senior leadership has been engaging in practices that violate both company policy and federal law. Overbilling clients, falsifying labor reports, skimming profits. This ends today. More shocked silence. One of the older project managers, a guy named Ray, who'd been with the company since the 90s, stood up. Are you talking about Robert and Alan? Yes. Are they being prosecuted? That depends on whether they cooperate with the transition, but they're both immediately terminated and barred from company property. Murmurs through the crowd. Some people looked relieved. Others looked nervous. Let me be clear about something, I continued. This is not a liquidation. This is not a shutdown. Hammond Asphalt and Paving will continue operating. In fact, we're in talks with Redstone Development Group about a merger that will expand our operations and create new opportunities. I gestured to O'Brien, who stood up and gave a brief overview of the merger proposal. New markets, new projects, plans to hire an additional 40 to 50 people over the next year. The mood in the room shifted. People started looking hopeful. There will be changes, I said, starting with full financial transparency, independent audits, clear policies on billing and project management. Anyone caught engaging in the practices that Robert and Alan pioneered will be immediately terminated and prosecuted. No exceptions. Ray raised his hand. What about the rest of us? The people who just did our jobs? You keep doing your jobs, I said. You get paid fairly. You get treated with respect. The meeting lasted another hour. Questions, concerns, a lot of processing. Some people were clearly on board. Others looked skeptical. A few walked out early, but by the end, enough people seemed willing to give me a chance. Not unanimous support, but enough. Sarah pulled me aside afterward. That went better than expected. Lower your expectations and you'll never be disappointed, I said. Your dad and brother are going to fight this. Let them try. My phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. We need to talk. Dad. You're right, it's not. Monday 9 a.m., board meeting. Bring your lawyer. You're going to regret this, daughter. Probably, but not as much as you're going to regret stealing from your own family, Dad. I blocked the number. Teresa called next. My stepmom, who'd been suspiciously absent from all the weekend activities. Cheryl, what is going on? Robert just called me and said you fired him. I didn't fire him. I gave him the option to resign or be terminated for cause. He'll make the right choice. You can't just take over the company. Robert built that place. No, Grandpa built it. Dad just drove it into the ground while pretending to be a businessman. This is ridiculous. You're not qualified to. I run a successful company, Teresa. I'm plenty qualified. What I'm not qualified for is covering up fraud, which is what you're asking me to do. She hung up on me. Brittany called after that. Alan's wife, who I'd barely spoken to in 5 years. You need to fix this, she said without preamble. Alan is the rightful heir to that company. Alan is a thief who got caught. There's nothing to fix. You're being vindictive. No, I'm being just. There's a difference. She hung up too. My mom called last. She'd been quiet all day. Are you okay? She asked. Yes, I'm great. Cheryl, this is a lot. I know. Your father is talking about suing you. So is Alan. Let them. They'll lose. This is going to tear the family apart. Mom, the family's been torn apart for years. We've just been pretending it wasn't. She was quiet for a long moment. What do you need from me? The truth. Did you know what they were doing? Not the details, but I suspected Robert was cutting corners. I confronted him about it 3 years ago. He told me I was paranoid. And you believed him? I wanted to. I wanted to believe your father was still the man I married, the man your grandfather trusted. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. At least she was honest. The board meeting tomorrow, I said. I need you there. I'll be there. Mom? Yes? I'm proud of you, for what it's worth. It was worth more than she knew. Sunday was supposed to be quiet. The retreat was technically over. Most people had checked out and headed home. I should have known better. I was in the main office around 10 o'clock a.m., going over the merger documents with O'Brien and Sarah when Travis burst into the conference room. We've got a problem, he said, breathless. Big problem. Someone's trying to wipe the company's servers. Remote access from an external IP. They're deleting files, emails, and financial records. My blood went cold. Can you stop it? Already did. Rolled back to this morning's backup. But whoever it was knew what they were looking for. They hit the billing folder, the HR files, everything related to project management. Can you trace it? Working on it, Travis said, but I'm betting it's Alan. The access credentials were his old login that should have been deactivated when you fired him yesterday. I shouldn't have been surprised. Get me everything, I said. I want a full forensic report by tomorrow morning. On it, he ran out. O'Brien was watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Your family plays hardball, he said. This isn't hardball, I replied. This is desperation. My phone rang. It was our corporate attorney, Laura. Cheryl, we have a problem. What now? Your father just filed an emergency injunction claiming you obtained control of the company through elder abuse and undue influence. He's arguing that Richard Sterling wasn't mentally competent when he established the trust. I laughed, sharp and humorless. Grandpa was sharper at 75 than Dad's ever been. He had a full cognitive evaluation 6 months before he died, specifically to prevent this kind of challenge. I know, and I'll argue that in court, Laura said, but the injunction hearing is tomorrow at 2 p.m. They're asking for a temporary restraining order, preventing you from making any major business decisions until the case is resolved. Can they get it? Unlikely, but it'll tie us up in court for months if they push it. Let them push it. Discovery will expose everything they've been doing. That's my thought too, Laura said. But Cheryl, you need to be prepared. This is going to get ugly. She was right, but I was ready. Sarah was pacing now, her mind already 5 steps ahead. We need to go public with this, she said. Get ahead of the narrative. If your dad's going to claim elder abuse, we need to show that you're the one protecting your grandfather's legacy, not destroying it. Press release? I asked. Better. Press conference, Sarah said. Tomorrow before the injunction hearing. Lay out everything. The fraud, the attempted cover-up, the merger plans. Make it clear that you're saving the company, not stealing it. O'Brien nodded. I can have our PR team here in 2 hours. We'll coordinate the message, make sure it's clean and professional. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Alan, calling from another number. I answered on speaker. You need to back off, he said immediately. This is our company. It's Grandpa's company, I said calmly, and he left it to me. Because you manipulated him. You're a snake, Cheryl, always have been, and you're a thief. We'll destroy you in court. You'll try, I said. You'll lose, and then you'll go to prison unless you take the deal I offered. Go to hell, he hung up. That went well, Sarah muttered. He's panicking, I said. Good. Panicked people make mistakes. My mom called next. Cheryl, I just heard about the injunction. This is getting out of control. You're going to destroy relationships that can never be repaired. Come on, sweetheart, I raised you better than this. No, I said quietly. You raised me to let people walk all over me. Grandpa taught me to stand up for myself. That hit her. I could hear it in the silence. I'll see you at the hearing tomorrow, I said, and ended the call before she could argue. The rest of Sunday was spent preparing press release drafts, making sure all the evidence was documented and backed up in multiple secure locations. O'Brien's team coordinated with our PR people. Sarah organized the financial data into a presentation that would make the fraud impossible to deny. Around 8 p.m., I was alone in Grandpa's old office, my office now, looking at the photos on the wall. There was one of him and me when I was maybe 12. We were at a work site, both wearing hard hats and grinning. He had his arm around my shoulders. Looking at it made me smile. My phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Last chance to make this right. Drop the charges. Give us our positions back and we can forget this ever happened. Dad, I replied, not happening. Then I blocked that number again. Monday morning, I wore my best suit. Sarah showed up in full battle mode. O'Brien brought his entire executive team. The press conference was scheduled for 11:00 a.m. at a hotel conference room downtown. We'd invited every major business publication in Denver, plus a few national outlets that covered construction and corporate corruption. They all showed up. I stood at the podium with Sarah to my left and O'Brien to my right. Behind us, a screen displayed the Hammond Asphalt and Paving logo and the merger announcement. Thank you all for coming, I started. I introduced myself and the business. Then I launched into the prepared statement. Grandpa's legacy, the trust structure, my vision for expanding operations through the Redstone merger, all the positive stuff first. After that, I dropped the hammer. Unfortunately, during the transition process, we discovered financial irregularities. Over the past several years, former senior leadership engaged in questionable billing practices, including overcharges on materials and labor. The reporters started typing frantically. Cameras flashed. These practices were orchestrated primarily by my father, Robert Hammond, and my brother, Alan Hammond, both of whom held executive positions until their termination this weekend. A reporter raised her hand. Are criminal charges being filed? That's under discussion with our legal team and law enforcement, I said. Our priority is making clients whole and restoring trust in Hammond Asphalt and Paving. An hour of questions passed. I kept my answers professional, factual, devastating. By the time we finished, the narrative was set. I wasn't the villain stealing a family business. I was the owner trying to clean up a mess. The court hearing was at 2 p.m. Dad and Alan showed up with their lawyer. Mom was there too, sitting in the back. Their lawyer opened with the undue influence argument, claimed Grandpa had been mentally declining, that I'd isolated him from the family, that the trust was established under suspicious circumstances. Laura destroyed them. She presented Grandpa's cognitive evaluation. She showed email correspondence proving Grandpa had been actively involved in business decisions right up until his death. Then she demonstrated that far from isolating him, I'd been bringing him regular updates about my company. Then she dropped the final card. Your Honor, the plaintiff's claims of undue influence fall apart when you consider the timeline. Richard Sterling established this trust after discovering that his son and grandson were engaged in fraud. We have documentation showing he'd been investigating irregularities for over a year before his death. She submitted the financial records, the emails, everything. Dad's lawyer tried to object, claiming the documents were obtained illegally. The judge shut him down. The defendant is the majority shareholder and owner. She had every right to access company records. The hearing lasted 90 minutes. The judge denied the injunction, but didn't dismiss the case entirely. Mr. Hammond, she said, looking at Dad, I'm not seeing sufficient evidence for the injunction you're requesting. However, some of your underlying claims may have merit for a full hearing. I'm denying the temporary restraining order, but this case will proceed to discovery. We'll schedule a hearing for 3 months from now. Not a total victory, but good enough. Outside the courtroom, Dad looked furious. He tried to confront me. Alan was with him. This isn't over, Dad said. Yep, I said, keeping my voice calm. See you in 3 months. You can either work with us on a reasonable settlement, or we can drag this out for years. I'm not settling. You want to fight? Fight. Your legal bills will bankrupt you before you get anywhere. Alan started to say something, but their lawyer pulled them both away. We're done here, I said, turning away. Mom caught up with me in the parking garage. Cheryl, wait. I stopped. She looked tired. Your grandfather would be proud of how you handled this, she said quietly, but he'd also be sad about how it ended. Grandpa understood that sometimes you have to cut out the rot to save the tree. She almost smiled. We stood there for a moment, two people connected by blood and history, but separated by choices and consequences. The board meeting tomorrow, she said. I am voting to approve the merger and confirm you as permanent CEO. Thank you, Mom. That night, my phone buzzed. Email from Dad's lawyer. They were proposing a settlement. Dad and Alan would resign, sell their shares at a discounted rate, and there'd be partial restitution with a structured payment plan. In exchange, no criminal referrals. It's something, I said, showing Sarah the email. It's not a total victory, but it's close enough, she said. Take it. Probably, I exhaled. Let our lawyers negotiate the details. I want them gone more than I want them in prison. The next morning, the board meeting was longer than expected. The merger got approved, though not unanimously. 2 board members abstained, uncomfortable with the speed of changes. My confirmation as CEO passed, but one of Dad's old allies voted against it and gave a speech about inexperience. 3 board members resigned, Dad's closest cronies. We replaced them with people O'Brien recommended, and one person I brought in, Ray, the project manager, who'd stood up at the all-hands meeting. By the end of the month, it was official. Hammond Asphalt and Paving was under new management. The merger was moving forward, though the timeline kept getting pushed back as lawyers reviewed everything. The old guard was mostly out, but a few lingered, making things difficult. I stood in Grandpa's office, my office now, and looked at that photo of us at the paving site. I smiled again. Then my phone buzzed. Text from Alan. I hope you're happy. You destroyed our family. I'm very happy. Dad's talking about writing you out of his will. I laughed at that. He can keep his money, I replied, then blocked his number. 3 months later, Hammond Asphalt and Paving completed the first phase of the Redstone merger. We landed the Colorado Springs Highway project, though at a lower margin than we'd hoped. Revenue was up 18%. Dad and Teresa moved to Florida. Didn't tell me directly, but Mom mentioned it. Just sold their house and left. Alan and Brittany got divorced. Apparently, losing your executive position puts stress on a marriage. Who knew? Mom and I have dinner once a month now. We're still figuring out how to talk to each other. Slowly rebuilding our relationship. Sometimes at night, I'll think about the old man who saw something in me that nobody else did. I like to think he's watching somewhere, grinning. We showed them, Grandpa, I say to the empty office. And somewhere I swear I can hear him laughing.